Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and a lot of people are currently comparing the Ineos Grenadier to the new Land Cruiser, and since I own both of them and a lot of you have requested for me to do this comparison, we're going to do it, and hopefully at the end of the video I'll be able to give all of you a pretty good idea of which one of these is the better unit to go for. Let's get into it. So the first point of comparison is going to be looks, which looks are very important for both these vehicles because they're expensive, and when you spend a lot of money on a vehicle, you want it to be stylish. And again, I think they did a good job. I quickly want to touch base on some elements I don't like on both the vehicles that could greatly improve their styling, and then, yeah, which one's the best. So with the Grenadier, it's just these center lights here. I think they should just have caps from the factory. That would improve the front end look quite substantially. And then we also need a brush guard from the factory in the US market that goes over the lights and everything over there, because it would just look so much cooler with this design. Anyways, the Land Cruiser is just all the plastic. There's so much plastic there. There's all this plastic over here. I actually don't mind plastic on fender flares that much, but here in the back, it just looks cheap. It looks crappy, especially like the receiver hitch cover looks like a diaper. It is just hideous. Other than that, I mean, both of them, again, they look really good on the exterior. I think the Grenadier has a slight win when it comes to styling. It gets way more attention in person. I have people every so often walk up to me and ask me about the Land Cruiser, but with the Grenadier, way more attention. Way more people walk up, they're like, what is this thing? It looks really cool. It's the best looking car I've seen in a long time, all of that. So yeah, I think Ineos gets the win on that. Now the second point is going to be off-road equipment. Both of these happen to be off-roaders, and so yeah, it's an important thing to note. So they both have skid plate protection underneath. The Land Cruiser, it's an option. You can get it on any of the packages. This is a first edition, so it comes standard with it. Now the Grenadier has an edge with the bumpers. Again, it's got real bumpers versus this plastic crap. Hopefully aftermarket companies come out with a solution with the Land Cruiser. Rock rail protection on both of them. Raised air intake from the factory with this, so that's another win for the Grenadier with off-road equipment, and it's faced the proper direction. Again, rear bumpers with both of them. They both have solid rear axles, but the Grenadier also has a solid front axle, whereas that has independent front suspension. So the Grenadier is going to be better for articulating everything, but then that is going to be better, kind of like the high-speed off-roading stuff. Now the Land Cruiser has a center and a rear locking differential. It also has a stabilizer bar disconnect, 2-speed transfer case, and it has Toyota's fancy multi-terrain select. So super advanced 4-wheel drive system with some really good hardware. Now just like the Land Cruiser, this has a 2-speed transfer case with a center locking differential. It also has front and rear locking diffs as well. It has an active traction control system, but it is nowhere near as advanced as Toyota's. They kind of rely more on the fact that this has solid axles and locking diffs to get through stuff. Now a couple more things on the exterior. The Land Cruiser, you can get a roof rack from the factory. The Grenadier, this one doesn't have it, but you can get a roof rack. Now the Grenadier puts a spare tire on the back, which is a huge plus. The Land Cruiser mounts it underneath the car, which is a huge negative. So when it comes to factory off-road kit, we're going to give the Grenadier a win here as well. I mean, it makes sense. That's kind of what the Grenadier is all about. So hopefully it would win in this department. Something that I do want to note though, the Land Cruiser does a lot better in snow and also in mud and stuff compared to the Grenadier. Again, that multi-terrain select is absolutely fantastic, and so that is one point where the Grenadier is not going to do as well. Again, it's got kind of more of an archaic traction control system, but that's part of the charm of the car. Now number 3 point of comparison is going to be the tires. You can fit big tires in both of these. So they both have 33s, a little bit different. The Land Cruiser is 255 rather by 80 by 17, so skinny tire. The Grenadier is 285 by 70 by 17. So actually technically it's a little bit of a smaller tire, but quite a bit wider overall. And so here's my experience with both of them. Stock suspension can handle bigger tires easily, and this is as big as you need for either of these vehicles. If you go bigger, I think it's just kind of an ego thing, because the amount of stuff I'm able to do with these tires is absolutely incredible on both of the vehicles. Now I know this is going to be a point of contention for some people, but I'll just say it. The Grenadier can handle wider tires, the Land Cruiser can not. My experience with the Land Cruiser, the handling and everything just gets way worse with the wider tires, whereas the Grenadier wasn't noticeable whatsoever. You can obviously do whatever you want with your vehicles, but what I would say is you can handle 33s on both of them, no problem whatsoever, but the Land Cruiser likes skinnier 33s, whereas the Grenadier likes wider ones, or can handle wider ones. I'm sure it'd be just as good on skinny ones too if you wanted to do that, but probably wouldn't because the Grenadier's heavy. And I guess that will be point number 4 with both of them. So the weight of the vehicles, the Grenadier you can see, so 77.16 for the gross vehicle weight rating. You got to minus the payload, which is 1261. So this thing weighs well over 6,000 pounds, 6,500 pounds roughly. Now the Land Cruiser is no lightweight, but compared to the Grenadier, it's quite lightweight. So gross vehicle weight rating is still over 6,000 pounds, 6,835, 1,100 pounds, so 5,700 pounds. So this thing weighs a good like 700 pounds less than the Grenadier. And so to sum up the last two categories, when it comes to tires, I'll just call it a tie with both of them. When it comes to weight, we'll get the Land Cruiser an obvious win. It also helps the Land Cruiser just handle better on road and get better fuel economy as well. And then it feels a little bit more nimble on the trails because, well, again, 700 pounds is a lot of extra weight to lug around. But I quickly want to note that I wouldn't say it's all bad for the Grenadier because this just feels way more solid. Yeah, just listen to how tin canny the Land Cruiser is compared to the Grenadier. So that is one benefit with the heavier car, is this just feels better built, more solid. Yeah, surprising that we're saying a non-Toyota is better built than a Toyota, but that's just, with this new Land Cruiser, it's a lot cheaper feeling. So I think now we're on point number 5, engines. Anyways, 3-liter inline-6 with the Grenadier, 282 horsepower, 331 pound-feet of torque, 8-speed auto. I average, it depends on the type of driving I'm doing, but usually around 17-ish miles per gallon since I put the bigger tires on the Grenadier. With the Land Cruiser, turbo 2.4-liter 4-cylinder hybrid, also goes through an 8-speed, 326 horsepower, 465 pound-feet of torque, so it's got more power than the Ineos. Fuel economy with this, so on stock tires, I was getting low 20s for the MPG, so usually around like 22, maybe 23 miles per gallon. Now with the bigger tires, I'm getting closer to about 20, 21 miles per gallon when I'm doing driving. It depends on how fast and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes it can dip even below that down into like the 19 mile per gallon range. So you do get better fuel economy with similar sized tires. So when it comes to powertrains, I think that they both feel really good overall. The low end on that with the hybrid's really good, but the overall engine performance on the Grenadier I think is just a little bit better. It's super smooth. Again, inline-6, it's really hard to beat. Not particularly fast though because of the horsepower figures and then also how much the vehicle weighs. But what I'll tell you is jumping from car to car, the powertrains are so similar in terms of how they deliver power overall that I just get into both of them and I like both of them. So I don't think there's a winner one over the other. I think that there's less complex, more complex, and so you got to kind of pick your poison there. Now, since these are cars that you sit in the interior of as the driver, let's talk about that. So really nice build quality with the Grenadier. Not the nicest materials, but easy to clean, and overall, just a nice place to be. Hard to get into these seats because of the bolstering, and there's no grab handle here for the driver. There's one up top that's completely useless for getting in and out. So you kind of have to use the steering wheel, not the most fun maneuver. And it's just high up overall. So it's not the worst thing, but a little bit harder to get in and out. They have really nice trim on the steering wheel. The toot function's always fun. It comes with nice amenities. So it's got like heated seats, for example. You've got your automatic climate controls. It does have a backup camera that's integrated into the screen. This does not bother me whatsoever. I got used to it within 2 seconds. Anyone that complains about it, I just always chuckle a little bit because it's like, it's not a big deal whatsoever. Then, yeah, the theater in this car is really cool with all the switches up top, Safari windows, all of that. And so it's a little bit more on the utilitarian side of things, right? Manual adjustments with pretty much everything, but it also has enough creature comforts that I think that it's great with daily driving. I just wish it was easier to get in and out. And again, they could fix that in 2 seconds with the grab handle. Now the Grenadier is utilitarian. This is definitely more luxury, very Lexus-like with the interior. I mean, these seats have memory function. They're heated and cooled. They're power adjustable as well. We've got this big digital gauge cluster. We've got adaptive cruise control with lane centering. We've got dual zone climate. We have a refrigerator here in the center console. You've got a power sunroof up top. So whereas the Grenadier was manual, simple, everything, this is power adjustable, fancy kind of modern everything. And so even though they're both rugged looking on the exterior, this is a lot more luxury inside. Now when it comes to storage space with the Grenadier, the seats do not fold flat, but very, very vertical. And yeah, it's easy to clean. Again, that's one of the cool things about the Grenadier. And I like the swing gate. It means that you've got like this large opening, really easy to use. Traditional hatch, which I absolutely hate. I wish that they'd done a swing gate. And that's just, I don't know, silly. The battery gets in the way with the Land Cruiser, so not nearly as much storage space. The seats also do not fold down flat in the Land Cruiser. Funny enough, they look like they would with the battery, but they definitely do not. It just has a lot less space, so it's a lot less practical when it comes to moving things compared to the Grenadier. Now the backseat in the Grenadier, I would compare it to like a Jeep Wrangler in terms of the spacing and all of that. So it's got good headroom, legroom's not impossible, but it's a little bit tighter. And this new Land Cruiser I would describe as more of the same. It's kind of like Wrangler seating in the sense of there's actually pretty good headroom, less headroom than the Grenadier because the sunroof kind of gets in the way a little bit, but it's still usable. So let's quickly talk about driving dynamics with both of these vehicles. The Land Cruiser is very luxe. It's quiet inside, there's a lot of insulation. Independent front suspension means that the turn-in is really sharp. It just drives like a modern car. Again, it still feels like body on frame, especially when you go over bumps and everything, which I really like, but it is very luxurious. The Ineos, on the other hand, it's not as loud as like a Wrangler or a Bronco, but definitely not as quiet as the Land Cruiser. So you definitely get a little bit more road noise. Wind noise is actually not bad at all. And then, yeah, it's going to be a little bit rougher. The steering is definitely all over the place, but I love it. Every single time I drive the Grenadier, it's an absolute blast. And so, yeah, if you're looking for more of a luxury experience, the Land Cruiser is going to provide that. This gives you a similar driving experience to like an old school SUV, but with a lot of modern stuff added to it. And so it actually drives good. So like I've driven older Defenders, older Wranglers, and their handling is impossible. Like it is super bad. This actually handles really well. It just has the weird steering. So I don't know, I like it. Now pricing. So if you want to get a base model Land Cruiser that starts at like 55 grand, the off-road options are going to depend, but most of those base model Land Cruisers are going to be right around that $60,000 mark after a few options. Mid-trim, most of those are around $70,000. This one's a first edition, which was a little bit more, so I picked it up used. But yeah, basically tops out at just over $70,000, which is where the Grenadier starts at. And if you load these things up, you can easily load them up to over $80,000, even over $90,000 with all of the off-road options. And so they really are kind of in different price categories. So to start to sum things up, Land Cruiser, here's how I would kind of boil it down, is really good with daily driving, and it's very capable off-road. If most of your trails are going to be 5 out of 10s or less, this is going to be more than enough rig for what you're doing. And again, it's got quite a bit from the factory that you can do some overlanding with it. And so just a great daily driver. And that's where the Land Cruiser really shines, is again, the daily driving side of things, all the creature comforts. The Grenadier, on the other hand, isn't nearly as daily drivable, right? It's a little bit louder, the steering is a little bit more all over the place, but it is a much better built vehicle. I would compare the Grenadier to the 200 series or to a G-Wagon when it comes to just how well built this vehicle is. And you really have to just get underneath the vehicle and see just how beefy everything is with the components and the frame, and then you'll understand. So if you're going to be doing like a dedicated overland build, overlanding is what you're going to do, this rig's just going to make a lot more sense. There's a lot more that you can do to it compared to the 250, at least right now. You will have more aftermarket support in the future, I'm sure. Not a lot right now, whereas this has way more aftermarket support, and it just has the beefiness to be able to handle thousands of miles of off-road abuse. And so yeah, if you're kind of tuned more towards off-roading, the Grenadier I think is going to be the obvious choice with the kit that it has from the factory. And so in conclusion, if I had to sell one of these, could only keep one of them, had to go to a one-car solution, well, I think that one-car solution would be 200 series Land Cruiser. I mean, seriously, this is such a beast of a vehicle. V8, it's got independent suspension, so it handles well, super comfortable, beefy frame. Like, it has everything that both those vehicles have kind of like combined. It's the ultimate car, pretty much. Also, if you guys want me to add this to the off-road comparison that I'm going to do with the Grenadier and the Land Cruiser 250, let me know and I can definitely add this one in. But back to these two. that would be a really tough choice if I could only stick with one of them. And the reason being, the Grenadier, I just think looks so cool on the outside. It's so much fun to drive. The only downside with it is just getting in and out sometimes gets a little bit obnoxious over time. And then it's a little bit louder, whereas this is a bit more luxurious. And so, I don't know. I think I'd probably go Team Grenadier. But at the same time, again, I really do like the luxury over there. So it's a tough choice. But I mean, if I was choosing between these and then also a 200 series, not a tough choice anymore. Just putting that out there. That's all.